Hey guys, Miss Lerner here. I'm here to go over the Unit 6 review activities, just to ensure that everybody knows what's going on. Because it seems like classical and operant conditioning are a very confusing topic for people, maybe because it was so long ago. And since the AP test is essentially going to be an open note test because, people can cheat. We need to kind of think about the more conceptual things that might be on the exam. So we need to go back through this. All right. So the first portion asked you about classical conditioning. Classical conditioning is based on an involuntary reaction to a stimulus. Okay, so I'm presenting something right in front of you. I don't have to teach you how to react to that thing. You automatically do it. And then that original natural stimulus is paired with something that was previously neutral that now comes to elicit a newly learned response, even in the absence of the first stimulus. Okay, so let's go through this together. As a child, Charlotte was an avid reader who spent hours buried deep in classic, exciting literature. Her favorite reading spot was in the backyard in her swing under a strong oak tree. Years later, as an adult, Charlotte is looking through a magazine selling tree swings and feels the rush of good memories. She actually starts to feel this way about all types of swings. Okay, so the thing that is presented that you don't have to actually learn a response to is classic exciting literature. Okay, so she reads the books, and as a result of reading the books, she experiences excitement, which would be the unconditioned response. Okay, now something that was previously neutral, that like if I just presented to her before this association would have no response, is going to come to become the conditioned stimulus. So the swing where she reads that exciting literature is going to be the conditioned stimulus. Okay, and then just kind of the rush of good memories will be the conditioned response. Okay, feeling great about the swing itself. She actually starts to feel this way about all types of swings as stimulus generalization, not just the original, only the tree swing in her backyard, but the ones in the magazine and so forth. Okay, great. Okay, so your history instructor enjoys incorporating student projects into the class. You, however, typically do poorly on projects and prefer to learn from lectures. When your instructor creates a project, she produces the guidelines on colored paper to make it stand out. Today, as she enters the class, you see that she has a stack of colored paper in her hands, and immediately you become agitated and upset. However, you find out that she has just started using colored papers for her lectures as well. After a while, you don't have a reaction to seeing colored paper. So this example is actually kind of a modification of a lot of things that happen in class. Like if you, let's say, see a classroom full of rows of seats, okay, and you associate those rows with taking a test, or you see a classroom, or you come into my classroom and I'm playing Three Little Birds by Bob Marley, and you are like, oh my gosh, do we have a test today? Okay. So what's happening here with you is that you're associating something that was previously neutral, colored paper, that would not be something negative, okay, with something that you really don't like naturally, which is a project. Okay, so the unconditioned stimulus is the project. The unconditioned response is being upset due to having to work on the project. Like you just don't like projects; they suck. Okay. Um, the conditioned stimulus, that previously neutral stimulus I was just talking about, is colored paper, and the conditioned response is being agitated and upset due to seeing the paper. Now it says she eventually starts to use colored papers for her lectures as well. And then you don't have a reaction anymore to seeing colored paper. If every single day you came into class and the rows were and the seats were in rows, you eventually wouldn't associate that with taking a test anymore. Or if I played that Bob Marley song every single day, you would not associate it anymore. Because remember, the reason why classical conditioning works is because the conditioned stimulus and the unconditioned stimulus are together in a heart forever until the conditioned stimulus keeps getting repeatedly produced over and over and over and over and over again without the unconditioned stimulus until the reaction decreases and goes down to zero, which is what we call extinction. So yeah, I'm presenting the colored paper, this conditioned stimulus, in the absence of the project, so much so that eventually my response to colored paper is gone. All right. Your 2-year-old cousin, Annabeth, giggles delightedly every time her father picks her up and tosses her into the air. Now, each time she sees her father, she feels great love and enjoyment at being with him. She only feels this way about her father. Okay, so there's something that's happening that is, the cause here, because a lot of people are having trouble with a cause and effect. A stimulus is a cause, a response is an effect. Okay. The thing that is natural that I don't have to tell Annabelle how to react to is being tossed in the air. She likes it, right? So the unconditioned stimulus is being tossed in the air. The unconditioned response is being delighted, giggling delightedly, being excited, like having so much fun. Okay. Now, she's not really like tossed in the air just by the wind. Someone tosses her in the air, and that person is going to be her father. So her father becomes associated with being tossed in the air. So that is a conditioned stimulus then. And then just seeing her father, okay, even when he doesn't toss her in the air anymore, the feeling great love and enjoyment, that's the conditioned response. She only feels this way about her father, not like any other man who looks like her father, okay, which would be stimulus discrimination. All right. So we have classical conditioning under control, hopefully. If we don't, we'll deal with it later. But the next part that's called Punisher, deals with operant conditioning. Operant conditioning is built upon the fact that you do a behavior and then there is a consequence to said behavior. Based upon the consequence to your behavior, the previous behavior is going to either be strengthened or weakened, more likely to occur in the future or less likely to occur in the future. So that being said, okay, all reinforcement strengthens the possibility of that behavior occurring in the future. All punishment decreases the probability that that behavior will happen in the future. Okay. Now, thinking about that more so, there are 2 types of each. So there's 4 total. Okay. You can have positive and negative reinforcement and positive and negative punishment. Now, again, I cannot emphasize this enough. Positive and negative do not mean good and bad in the context of learning. They mean adding something and taking something away. Okay. So positive reinforcement is adding something to increase behavior. What type of thing would I have to add so that I would be more likely to do it in the future? Something that's pleasant. Okay. Now, negative reinforcement is taking something away to increase the probability that something is going to happen in the future. What kind of thing would I have to take away so that I would do it again? Well, it would have to be something that's unpleasant. I'm taking away something unpleasant, okay, so that I'm more likely to do it again. And just like the thought or the possibility of having to do it, like I have to pass this class so that I can avoid summer school, is going to be enough sometimes just for negative reinforcement. I have to clean my room so my mom doesn't yell at me, okay? So she doesn't nag me anymore. I don't want her to nag me. So I'm doing this, I'm cleaning my room so that I am going to be less likely to have to take away that annoying nagging. Okay. Now, positive and negative punishment. Punishment decreases the probability of the behavior. So positive punishment is going to be something that is unpleasant, adding something unpleasant. Typical examples of positive punishment, spanking, being yelled at. These are not good disciplinary actions, okay? Because operant and classical conditioning can actually interface with one another. What is going to happen in positive punishment is that a child is going to associate the pain from being hit. Okay, so the UCS is really being hit. The UCR is going to be pain. The CS is going to be the parent, and then the CR is going to be fear of the parent. So when you hit someone, you're going to make a strong classical conditioning association of fear toward that person in the future. Okay, so we try to avoid positive punishment. Negative punishment. Negative punishment is, again, decreasing the probability that something happens in the future. Okay, but it's taking something away to decrease that probability. So, that being said, what kind of thing will we have to take away so that someone will be less likely to do something in the future? It would have to be something pleasant. Okay, I'm taking away your freedom. I'm taking away your car keys. I'm taking away your cell phone so that you don't do that again. Okay, that is negative punishment. So I hope that that's a little bit clearer for everybody. If it's not, rewatch it again. Okay. Negative reinforcement by far is the most confusing concept for students to understand. Again, you are taking away something unpleasant in order to increase behavior. A negative times a negative is a positive. All right, so let's go through these. Juanita asks a useful question in class, and her teacher responds, "I'm glad you asked that, Juanita." Juanita soon regularly raises her hand to contribute in class. Well, that's an example of positive reinforcement. Okay, I'm glad you asked that, Juanita. That is a pleasant outcome to raising your hand. I'm going to raise my hand more. Positive reinforcement. Dante cannot sit still in kindergarten class, and his teacher tells him he will have to remain inside while the other students go out for recess. Dante learns to sit still. Okay, so the behavior that is really decreasing is the fact that Dante is acting out, right? So we don't want that to happen in the future. So it has to be punishment. Okay, and what are you doing? Are you adding or taking something away? You are taking something away. You're taking away something pleasant, recess. So it is negative punishment. Finnegan, such a good cat name, your cat has begun to bite more frequently. You squirt him with a water bottle and he learns not to repeat the behavior. So again, what's the consequence? It's unpleasant and the behavior is decreasing. So it has to be positive punishment. Okay, it's punishment because the behavior is decreasing and you are adding something which is unpleasant, which is positive. You check your text messages during algebra and have your phone confiscated by the teacher. Wah, wah. When your parents find out, they take your cell phone for 2 weeks. When you finally get your phone back, you do not check your texts in class any longer. Okay, so the behavior that is happening that we're looking, at first you were checking your text messages, and what's going to happen is you're not checking them any longer, so your behavior is decreasing. Okay, and why is it decreasing? Well, you're taking away something pleasant, your cell phone. So that is negative punishment. And lastly, you're hoping that if you take a different route to your fifth period class each day, you can avoid the kid who has been bullying you. When you do not see them in the new hall, you feel relieved and take that route from now on. Okay. The behavior is taking the new route. You are more likely in the future to take the new route. So that is reinforcement. Okay. Why are you more likely to take the new route? Because you're avoiding something or you're taking something away that is unpleasant, the bully. Okay. Negative reinforcement. I hope that's a little bit clearer to people. Okay, the next section is entitled Get on the Schedule. Okay, now these were schedules of reinforcement. Overarchingly, the best way to learn a new behavior is continuous reinforcement, reinforcing someone every single time they do that behavior. But that is going to be very easy to extinguish and make pretty much not meaningful. So that being said, you are going to want to use intermittent reinforcement or reinforcement every so often to maintain a behavior because these schedules of reinforcement are resistant to extinction. Okay, so there are kind of 4 possibilities here. A schedule of reinforcement can be fixed or variable. Fixed meaning set, variable meaning changing, just like in math. Okay, and it can be an interval or ratio. An interval schedule reinforcement deals with amount of time that has elapsed, okay, 2 weeks, 5 minutes, what have you. You could just be sitting there and something is getting provided to you. It has nothing to do with that exact behavior. Ratio, think R, responses. It is based upon your responses. Okay, so every time you raise your hands, if you're playing a slot machine, you have to play the slot machine. It has to be a ratio schedule reinforcement. It would be really nice if I just was walking by the slot machine and I just got paid out, but that's not what happens. You have to be in it to win it for a ratio schedule reinforcement. Okay, so for each example, identify the appropriate schedule. Okay, if you save 10 UPC codes on each case of dog food you buy, you receive a free case from the supplier. How is your dog food buying behavior being reinforced? So you ask two things. Is it set or changing? Do I have to do something, or is it just happening based on time? Well, every 10 codes, that must be fixed. Ratio, I have to, actually save those UPC codes. It doesn't just magically come. Okay, and I have to buy the dog food itself. All right, your neighbors who are new parents decide not to respond to every cry their infant makes, but instead to allow the baby to fuss for a while before they see what is wrong. From the baby's perspective, on what schedule is her crying behavior being reinforced by her parents' attention? Okay, so does it happen every time or every set amount of time? No, so it must be variable. Okay, now, is the baby doing something? Yes, it's ratio. Okay, not interval. Sasha works for a new shoe store that pays her weekly no matter how many shoes she sells. Her check comes every week regardless of how many customers come in the store. Okay, so every week, fixed. Okay, week, time. It doesn't matter how many shoes she sells. It's pretty sweet. Like, she can have a really bad week, still gets a salary. Salary jobs are going to operate on fixed interval schedules of reinforcement. Monty works at the suit shop and receives a bonus for every 3 suits he sells. Every. Must be fixed, right? Must be fixed. Does Monty have to do something? Yes, he has to sell those suits. Sell those suits, Monty. Okay, so it must be fixed ratio. Tim is a golf junkie. Each summer, he tees off at 6:30 a.m. on the dot and feels an adrenaline rush as soon as he hits the first ball. Okay, so 6:30 a.m. on the dot every time, fixed. Is it time or doing something? It's according to time. Even probably those days where it's rainy or whatever at 6:30, he probably gets that rush of adrenaline anyway. Fixed interval. Okay, and then the multiple choice portion, I know I continued the numbering on your version, but I don't have a scanner at home, so I'm just using a previous version. So I hope you can follow along. It's just, they're the same questions. It's just that your numbers are farther along than these. Okay. Just before something scary happens in a horror film, they often play scary sounding music. When I hear the music, I tense up in anticipation of the scary event. In this situation, the music serves as so the scary sounding music, if it wasn't associated with the scary event, it would just be neutral. Okay, so something scary happens, okay, which is the unconditioned stimulus. I feel fear, which is the unconditioned response. The scary music comes right before that scary event, so it must be a conditioned stimulus. Okay, in teaching your cat to jump through a loop, or it should probably be a hoop, whatever, which reinforcement schedule would facilitate the most rapid learning? Okay, as I said before, continuous, best way to learn. Most resistant to extinction is going to be the variable schedules of reinforcement. Interval is very sustaining over time. Ratio is really hard you have a lot of the behavior that is going to go on in a sharp sort of increase. Okay. Think about variable interval schedule in terms of like a pop quiz, okay, or variable ratio schedule in terms of being a gambling addict. They're both very resistant to extinction. As the doors of the elevator close, Lola, a coworker you despise, enters the elevator. You immediately leave, mumbling about having forgotten something. Your behavior results in, okay, so are you more or less likely to leave next time? More likely. Why do you leave? Because you're taking away something unpleasant. Lola, negative reinforcement. Which researcher studied latent learning? Well, you have to pay the toll man to get through the maze. Okay, he came up with latent learning and cognitive maps. Wolfgang Kurler was insight learning. Bandura was observational or social learning. Watson was going to be little Albert and classical conditioning of fear. And B.F. Skinner was going to be the father of operant conditioning. I'm going to move myself over there. Maybe not. Maybe a little bit over here. Okay. Which of the following is an example of positive reinforcement? Buying a child a video game after she throws a tantrum, going inside to escape a thunderstorm, assigning a student detention for fighting, getting a cavity filled at the dentist to halt a toothache, or depriving a prison inmate of sleep. Okay, so positive reinforcement has to be that the behavior is going to be more likely to increase in the future. Buying a child a video game after she throws a tantrum. She's going to be more likely to throw a tantrum in the future? Yes. Throwing a tantrum, I get a video game. Awesome. That is definitely an example of positive reinforcement. So that is going to be the answer. Going inside to escape a thunderstorm, are you going to be more or less likely in the future to go inside to escape it? More likely. It's negative reinforcement. Assigning a student detention for fighting, that is going to be negative punishment. Getting a cavity filled at the dentist to halt a toothache, that is going to be negative reinforcement because in the future, you're going to want to go to the dentist to prevent that from happening. Depriving a prison inmate of sleep, that's going to be a positive punishment. Okay, what is the goal of both positive and negative reinforcement? Immediately, you see reinforcement has to be increased. So do we see, we're going to cross out A and C to ensure there are no negative consequences following the behavior. Not necessarily. I should say on number 5, the College Board may try to trick you. A lot of what we consider to be kind of negative or unpleasant behaviors are positively reinforced. Okay, it's not just good behaviors. So to add a primary reinforcer after someone does a proper behavior, that's putting some sort of qualitative judgment on it. It's just to increase the likelihood that the preceding behavior will be repeated. Okay, so B.F. Skinner was a radical behaviorist, which means that he didn't think that cognition or thought mattered at all. Okay, so anything that says thought, because when I say cognitive, you say thought, cognitive, thought, cognitive, thought. Okay, Pavlov's dog learned to expect that the food would follow the bell. That expectation is internal. That is a thought. So no. Baby Albert thought that the white rat meant that the loud noise would sound. That's thought. Pigeons peck discs knowing they will receive food. Knowledge, that's thought. Cognition is thought, playing an important part in learning. So the answer is all learning is observable. Okay. Wolfgang Köhler conducted a series of experiments in which he placed a chimpanzee in a cage with a banana on the ground just out of reach of the cage. After a period of inaction, the chimp suddenly grabbed the stick out of the stage, poked it through the cage, and dragged the banana within reach. This type of learning is called, so remember I had said, in your mind's eye, you're picturing the light bulb like in this bunch of bananas on top of the ceiling, right? And they're stacking up these crates, even though they've never really seen them before. It's seeing kind of a new purpose for a familiar object. This is what we call insight learning. That aha moment, that moment that you had when you were when we were putting the horse puzzles together, and finally you knew the answer. Like, oh my gosh, that is insight. A group of researchers. Okay, this is a real research study. John Garcia et al. Attempts to discourage coyotes from attacking their sheep by placing a substance on the wool of the sheep that makes coyotes violently ill if they eat it. Very quickly, the coyotes avoid the sheep entirely. In this scenario, what are the UCS, CS, and UCR, and CR respectively? Let's see. So let's go through this for a second. The wool of the sheep that makes coyotes violently ill if they eat it. Okay. So there's something there that is presented that I don't have to teach the coyotes to react to. That is going to be the substance that makes them ill. That's the UCS. The UCR is being ill, getting sick. What is paired with that substance? Well, the wool of the sheep. That's the condition stimulus. What's the condition response? The coyotes, just seeing the wool of the sheep, they avoid it. If you see the footage of the coyotes, they will cower around the sheep to avoid interacting with them. So what are the UCS, CS, and CR respectively? Respectively just means in order. UCS is the substance. The CS is the sheep's wool, and the CR is aversion to sheep. Okay, which of the following psychologists would argue that learning can take place when someone is watching another person and performs that behavior even when not reinforced? Hello, Bandura, Bobo doll study, observational learning, social learning theory. You should immediately know that. Joey is refusing to complete his homework on time. After learning about Joey's love of trains, Mrs. Anderson promises to reward Joey with a Thomas and Friends video upon completion of his next 2 homework assignments. This is an example of positive reinforcement. Yes, we'll keep that one around. Generalization, um, no. Insight, no. Latent learning, no. Is it hidden? No, it's not hidden. This is actually what's going to be called the Premick principle, which wasn't in your textbook, but you should know. The Premick principle is just the fact that you can reward reinforce doing a less desirable activity with the promise of a more desirable one. So, if you behave in class, we will watch a movie next week. If you eat all your vegetables, you get a brownie at the end of this dinner. Okay, so you can use the Premick principle, especially in teaching and parenting, to your advantage for less desirable activities. Lily keeps poking Jared in Mr. Clayton's 3rd grade class. Mr. Clayton tells Jared to ignore Lily. Mr. Clayton is hoping that ignoring Lily's behavior will extinguish the behavior. Okay. In classical conditioning, extinction happens because the CS is presented repeatedly in the absence of the UCS until the response goes down to 0. In operant conditioning, how does extinction happen? It happens when there are no consequences to that behavior. So you're just ignoring something. Now that's all well and good, but so why don't we do that all the time? Why don't if we have a student in class who's always acting out, why don't we just ignore it? Well, it might take a really long time for that behavior to be extinguished because you would have to tell all of the other students in the class not to react as well. So every little snippet of positive reinforcement that student gets is going to reactivate that operant conditioning relationship. And then an example of a fixed interval schedule of reinforcement is a dog getting a treat every time it sits on command. No, that would be fixed ratio. Winning money in a slot machine, that would be variable ratio. Getting paid for each widget you sell, that would be fixed ratio. Being paid for the week, yes, that would be fixed interval. Or getting reward for good behavior once in a while, that would be variable ratio. All right, so there's a lot of information there, but I really, really hope that helped because it's a confusing unit. It's conceptual, it's theoretical, it's a way that you have to apply your knowledge. So please, 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 if you're having trouble, reach out. If you're having trouble, rewatch. Just, try to think about how this applies in your life. All right. It's nice hopefully seeing all your faces and hang in there. Spring break's coming soon. Okay. Bye-bye.